Few professions have more at stake than that of the emergency operator. Not understanding the subtle shift and inflections in the tone of a caller may mean the difference between understanding someone being kidnapped and someone playing on the phone. It is because of the need for an exacting degree of accuracy that it is so important for quality assurance to take place. But there are some who question the wisdom of constantly doing these. This is Lifeline. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lifeline 911 Podcast. I am your co host, Gary, and with me, as always, is your host, Erica.
Hello.
We are going to be discussing doing quality assurance. This is basically listening to calls that 911 operators and police dispatchers take and making sure that they're following SOPs, guidelines, and best practices in order to take the calls successfully. It's an important and really a time consuming part of any supervisor's job, generally, I would say.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
But uh, but it's also, I think, really important because it gives you a chance as a supervisor to really pinpoint issues that are going on. I mean, you could see like trends amongst your entire staff, or
Yes.
maybe just one individual that's having a real issue with doing whatever the particular task is.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said in the intro, it is necessary. And I don't know about, well, let me back up. We have spoken to at least one, maybe two agencies that have dedicated QA, like a QA division or a person or a staff of people that is their reason for being. That is what they do. And
Mm-hmm.
they QA the staff, you know, I think it's supposed to be random, but or even if it's not random, it's, there's some sort of pattern. Each shift is done so many times per month or whatever that looks like. But it's necessary, it's tedious, and if you don't have a dedicated staff, you as supervisors then you have to get that in.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get it
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to do. It's tough in a lot of ways when you're a frontline supervisor, because there's just so many interruptions in your day. Um,
Mhm.
like in the last episode, we were talking about dealing with complaints and irate callers, and you
Yes.
know that can just like sneak in and take up a half hour of your time.
Easy,
Uh, yeah,
easy.
and then your whole train is derailed. Um,
Yes.
and you talked about some agencies that have like dedicated either people or teams that do that, and I think to myself that would just be so wonderful because that would take that off of my plate as like
Mhm.
a frontline supervisor, and also would help increase the consistency of how the QAs are done. Like
Yeah.
for me, for my team, I try and do 5 QAs a month on each of them, uh,
Mm.
which is just a little sampling of sort of their calls, but to try and
Yeah.
catch things that are going on. But if you had like a dedicated group of people, that would be done across the board because you may do your QAs in a different way.
Yeah, well, and I think because we're at the same agency, that is the and I know that when we were on shift together, that was our rule of thumb, or at least that was the formula we tried to follow. It's easier said than done. We are
Hmm.
fortunate even at our agency because of its size to have leads who is, there's floor CTO lead, then supervisor. So we at least have a small army of people
Hmm.
that we can task with that, but even they are our co-captains in running the shift, so they can become as easily derailed as we can.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then
Because
add to that, depending on the shift that you work, like what we used to work together,
yeah.
evening shift has the newest of the new most of the time, or the most number of the newest of the new, all under the same roof, all working the same shift, and they all have the same questions every day,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
means they are constantly asking questions, 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 which is good. Please ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please ask before you break something. But
It's a good way to put that. Yeah.
but it 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 interrupts, and so it makes it easier said than done to get those done.
Hmm. And you know, it's important to do, but like for me, there's so many things that have to take precedence over that. Like I really, really want to get QAs done, but I need to get people's their their timesheets have to be done.
No
The
if, no ands, no
rosters,
buts. Yeah.
yeah, the rosters have to be done. X, Y, and Z has to be done,
The
and
swarm call out has to happen.
yeah,
We have to move dispatchers around in order to create one out of thin air to work this critical incident. You know, somebody leaving the shift because of an emergency. Now I have to play Tetris with the roster. I can't not do that in order
mm,
to get the QAs done.
hmm yeah, and unfortunately, I think a lot of times. Uh, you just have to make decisions on because you can only have so much on your plate,
Yeah.
and uh, sometimes those QAs have to go just because if there's no room, there's no room. Especially we talked a couple of weeks ago about sort of rebuilding after COVID.
Yeah.
You know, for at least at our center for 2 or 3 years there, it was just literally like survival mode. Like,
Literally.
can
Yes.
we have enough people on the phones to try and
Yeah.
answer some of these calls, and dispatch some of these calls?
Mhm.
And now that we're kind of coming out of that, thankfully, with better staffing, uh, it's
Yeah.
really, really critical to make sure that we do, QAs, to test that that everybody's following all the policies and procedures. Because we, in the last 5 years, we have had so many new ones get put out, and you know,
Yeah.
is somebody following something from 2 years ago or 6 months ago, or is it the current thing? So trying to navigate all that is really a challenge to do.
It is. And then you have to manage the perception of what QAs are from the floor.
Hmm.
Because just thinking back to when I was on the floor, I wasn't worried too much about QA simply because I had been doing the work so long that the nuts and bolts of the job was not new to me.
Hmm.
So I was not worried about QAs. I didn't, even if I knew the supervisor might be paying attention, I didn't stress it. But that's not the way most people feel about it. Matter of fact, a lot of people feel really negatively about it. And you're having to, as a supervisor, manage the expectations. Not well, yeah, actually not expectations. Manage their perception of what it is. They feel like, and I've heard this, so I'm not just making it up. I've heard people feel, you say that they feel like we're just waiting for them to mess up, which is why we do the QAs.
Yeah,
We're waiting to
yeah.
pounce.
Hmm. When it's nothing could be further from the truth. And I think
Agreed.
if a lot of that perception is because like if you don't do them on a regular basis, then suddenly getting a thing that's saying like, hey, here's how you did on these calls, you're gonna be like, well, why am I getting this? Whereas if
Hmm.
that's something you're kind of used to every month, like um, I think everybody likes feedback on their performance. So,
Or
how am I doing? Because if you're just sitting there and be like, I don't know, like, am I doing a good job? Am I doing a bad job? I don't know. They haven't said anything, so I guess I'm doing okay. Um,
which is not good enough.
right.
So so okay, tell me if you agree from a leadership perspective, not whatever, regardless of the reason, legitimate or not, to not do them, would you agree that it is, in a sense, a disservice to the employee?
Yo, yeah. Not only to the employee, but to uh, anybody using their services, which would be,
Agreed.
the citizens. Because
Yeah.
uh, I want my staff to feel confident in themselves. And
Mhm.
when when you do consistent QAs on them, they feel like, okay, not only does that build trust between you as a supervisor and them as, the call taker or the dispatcher, but
Mhm.
they build trust in themselves because they're like, I do know what I'm doing. I feel confident in that. And, you know, as you said, shift, the mid shift, has a lot of new people on it. Those are people
Mhm.
that typically don't have a lot of confidence in themselves because they may have been doing this for 6 months or
or
5
less even.
days. Yeah,
Yeah, no kidding. It could easily be that. Yes, so true.
yeah. And then they're on an hour and a half long suicide call, and they're like, I don't know how to talk to this guy to keep him from blowing his brains out. How
Mhm.
am I doing? And
Yeah.
if they can have that confidence of like, you know what, I've never been on this type of call before, but I did this kind of call and I did really, really well on it. And my supervisor said I did A, B, and C really good, and I need to
Mhm.
try and do a little better with D, E, and F.
Mhm.
They can then take that, and if there's that trust there, like the supervisor is guiding me to be the best version I can be, rather than they're trying to find ways to fire me.
Agreed. Yeah. So, okay. With that said then, and this is a tricky one, especially when you get into this might even be a whole see, we say this all the time that the next episode or the next couple of episodes often are born out of a current episode.
Mm-hmm.
So delivering that QA feedback
Mm-hmm.
is important to how
Yes.
they not only receive the information, but how they perceive subsequent QAs. Because if you got someone who's been in the game 5 days, they're just released from training, we all remember what that was like. Some of us have to reach a little further back than others, but we remember what that feels like. You're relieved, you're excited, but you're also scared to death.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know that your supervisor is going to be listening periodically to your calls or pulling a batch of them every few days, you're looking forward to that. As a new person, I looked forward to whenever the QA would come when I was really, really new. I would look forward to whenever they would sit me down and say, you know what? Good job doing this, 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 and this. Over here, we might need to work hard because right in that moment, I'm leaning in. I'm leaning
Mm-hmm.
forward and I'm like ready, all but taking notes on what I can do better. Right. So you said it's establishing that trust early on. If they know that that's the purpose for it,
Mm-hmm.
then they don't have time to get into that negative headspace about it. I know I kind of
Mm-hmm.
rambled a little bit, but I think that's key. Setting up that expectation, the why of it, and delivery is everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And delivery and consistency. So, um, if it's something new, people are going to be wary of it. If it's
Yeah,
like I've never gotten this before, why is this happening? But like, ideally, yeah, you'd want to like pull them aside, have a one-on-one with them, go over each of the calls, talk about them, so they can really dig into them and understand what's going well and what's not working. Um, I think very often, just because our plates do get so full, it ends up being kind of an email, just like here's my thoughts on all these. You know, take a look at them and try and do better next time, or like you did really good on this, and keep improving. Um, which isn't nearly as good as like a one-on-one a one-on-one meeting where you talk
yeah,
about it, because they can ask questions, and you can ask questions and improve both, because really no no good supervisor is ever looking to fire an employee, because uh
absolutely.
we want you to do the best you can be. Not everybody's going to be a gold medal call taker or dispatcher or what have
Sure.
you, but
Right.
um, if we can get you to be the best version of yourself that you can be, you know, that's a win.
Absolutely. And some will excel at other types of calls and some, dispatchers, there are dispatchers that absolutely kill it on vehicle pursuits and not so much on just the mundane stuff. Or
Hmm.
there's others that are rock solid in the fundamentals, but don't do so well on those things that don't happen often. I think, how does Gordon Graham put it? The Lexapol guy, he says those high risk, low frequency, less discretionary time to act. Those events don't happen very often, right? So when
Hmm.
they do happen, those are the key moments to go in with a QA and say, okay, I am not looking to crucify you here. This is not something that happens very often. So let's debrief, if you will. Because
Hmm.
we had the episode about debriefing. I think
Yeah.
QA is very similar to a debrief.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, sort of a planned
Mhm.
debrief, like we're, a consistent planned, and could be, a lot of covering a lot of mundane. issues. Like
Mhm.
one of the most common and easiest type of calls that we have is sort of an alarm call. So an alarm company calls and they're like, "Hey, we have motion detected here."
Yeah.
Um, Really an easy call because you're not even talking to anyone that's in any danger. It's a
Hmm.
third party that's sitting in their cubicle somewhere and talking to somebody else in a cubicle, and you got
Yeah.
cross cubicalization going on, and so it's low stress. It's just like, I need the address. What's going on? But it's on those kind of calls where you're like, okay, well, you missed A, B, and C, which are really minute things, but if
Sure.
we can like drill that in here, then when like the shooting calls come in, that's already going to be in your mind. You're not going to have to dig for what do I ask.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the QA helps with that
Mm-hmm.
because it will once it's pointed out because like you said, a lot of times you don't even realize that you're missing this component.
Mm-hmm.
You think you're trugging along and you're doing fine, and then supervisor comes or the lead or the QA person or the QA team pulls you aside and says, "So, I love how you're doing X, Y, and Z, but did you realize that over here consistently you are missing this component on this type of call. Every single time you take one of these, you do outstanding on getting the address. Did you know you don't verify the phone number
Mm-hmm.
ever on them?" And the employee's going, what? Oh my God. They're mortified.
Yeah, I need to
But
do that.
without that, no kidding. And they know they do, but time and complacency,
The silent killer.
the silent killer, sets in. And before you even realize it, you're missing steps and you don't even know you're doing it until somebody brings it to your attention. You're like, "Oh, snap. Oh my God. Okay."
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a shot in the arm that they need to refocus
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
not and they don't versus feeling beat down but again, delivery. I think the
Mm-hmm.
delivery is key in that.
Yes, absolutely. That's delivery is so important, and uh, it's really important to do QAs because I often tell people that my goal as a supervisor is to do as little work as possible, and people have that reaction. Uh, and what I what I mean by that is I want my team to feel so confident in themselves and their abilities that they don't need me to
Agreed.
do a lot. Like they can
Mhm.
answer their own questions. They have the confidence, the skills to succeed no matter what the situation is.
Sure.
And because then when that happens, I don't have to like worry about each of these little things, and I can focus on other things that I want to
Mhm.
spend my time doing, like Excel spreadsheets or something. They're wonderful.
Which
It's a
people
party.
okay, let me just you know what? I just need to go off on a tangent here for a second. For anybody who does not know, this man and spreadsheets and Excel and numbers, it's like Christmas morning for him. However, it's my kryptonite. I
Yeah,
cannot, do not
that's
want
why,
to ever.
that's why we're a good team.
Yeah, and thank God for Ashley, who is your counterpart, who loves the same things. I don't, mm-mm. So when my team is humming along, the last thing I will be doing is any type of spreadsheet if I can avoid it.
Yeah,
Let me just put it
you're
out there.
yeah, you're much more likely to find Erica at a community outreach event or talking to some people that are touring the center. Like, I
Agreed.
mean, I can do that. I hate doing it, but I could do it. Erica could do spreadsheets. She hates doing it, but she can do it. So you just find what you like doing, and then you focus
Yes,
your
you
energy.
find your niche. You find your
Mm,
niche. And that is definitely mine. I'm the social butterfly of the two of us.
hmm
He could
But
he
yeah,
could butterfly, it just wouldn't be the same. So, okay. All right,
but
back
yeah,
on
so
topic.
yeah, yeah, you can get your team functioning highly, and then you just have to make slight adjustments rather than like yanking the wheel trying to stay on the road. It's just like, okay, just need a little bit
Nice.
here.
Nice.
um and the QAs are I think probably the best way to get to that point because you're building a repetition of talking to them so they feel comfortable
Mhm.
coming to you with questions. You feel comfortable going to them with critiques. um and you inculcate a culture of like why we're doing this is to get better. It's not to
Mhm.
get somebody fired because it's a lot of paperwork to fire somebody. I'd
And
rather just have a
and you
good,
can't replace them easily.
yeah. I'd rather
It's
have a good,
counterproductive.
yeah. I'd rather have a good employee that's working here than a bad employee that's not working here. You know.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah. Or bad employee who is still working here when they should not be working here. That's a
Well,
whole other
that's
episode.
another topic.
I love it.
See how they come around.
Yes, they
Um,
do.
but yeah, like we want everybody to succeed as best they can. It's
Mhm.
a rising tide raises all ships. Um, is
Nice.
kind of my philosophy on that.
And you're not wrong, 100%. The supervisors should be able in a perfect world, and shout out on YouTube in the comment section if you agree as a supervisor, you're like Gary. The goal of your job is to have a well-oiled machine that is going about completing the mission with as few hiccups as possible. Which, if you're not having to constantly guide the ship, and by guide I mean answer questions all the time, because these people have had no feedback, they've had no QAs, there have been no one-on-ones, and so they don't know whether they're doing well or not so well. You're constantly inundated with this kind of stuff. You're doing maintenance on a continuous basis, and you can't do anything else but that. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are in a good place because you've done your QAs and your people aren't afraid of them and they look forward to them and they accept the feedback because it's given in the right way, now suddenly you've got that well-oiled machine and you can go do spreadsheets like Gary.
Yeah, and I liked how you put that maintenance, because like it's like a car. Like if you never change your oil, never get new tires, never do any of the thing, new brakes, like you're gonna have lots and lots of catastrophic problems that you have to fix right then.
Right
Whereas
then.
if you're maintaining throughout, the odds of those kind of things happening are much less, and you feel more confident, like taking your car on a long road trip, because
Yes,
you know if you're like, I don't know if this transmission's going to blow up, I'm probably not going to drive to Oklahoma and back on my weekend.
absolutely not.
Um,
I like that. That's good.
yeah.
So, to the employee who says, I disagree
Hmm.
with the outcome of this QA. I think it was XYZ, and I don't know why you're telling me that it's wrong. What do
Hmm.
you have? I guess the question is, have you encountered that? Have you given a feedback to someone and they argue back?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll. It, it's not so much argument, but they'll say like, I thought that this was happening in the call, so that's why I titled it this way, or that's why I did this with that. And I'm like,
Mhm,
well, that's not correct, or whatever it is. I mean, there are times when maybe I was wrong, and
mhm.
it's important to be able to admit that. But generally, when you're doing a QA, like you've got time to double check the policy, make sure everything's correct. So you really shouldn't. You as the person presenting it shouldn't go there with incorrect information
You
very
shouldn't.
often. Yeah,
You
it
shouldn't.
does happen because you could be like, oh, you know what? I was using that email from 3 weeks ago, and there's an email that came out yesterday, but it only went to this shift. So you're right on that. But that's a whole
Yeah.
other topic on SOP consistency.
Yes. Yes, it is. I think we did we do one of those? Yeah.
Yes,
That
yeah,
well, we can always revisit because it's a constant thing. I mean,
yeah.
it's ever changing, and that is one of, and you know what? Actually, that is, and we may have already said it, but it bears saying again. One of the reasons for QAs is because our worlds are constantly changing. There's always a change in an SOP. There's always a new directive based on some new law that just passed. Now we have to send out a training bulletin because we don't have time to update the whole SOP because that's a process in and of itself, right?
Hmm.
So, you know, we've especially, let's just remember COVID. During COVID, there was a training bulletin for everything. We were changing how many times we responded to this call. What did we give out over the radio based on this household who may have reported having had a COVID, or someone who's saying, I need the officers to wear a mask. I mean,
Hmm.
you just name it. It was
Yeah.
constant. My head spun.
Hmm. Yeah, and for those who've been in the industry a very, very long time, you'll know that it's not just when a once in a lifetime thing like COVID comes around. After 9/11, they had the
Mhm.
anthrax scares, and so anytime anybody had any white powder of any kind, uh, the whole cavalry was going. Um,
Yes.
and then in Austin, we had a serial
Bomb.
bomber a couple of years
Yeah.
ago, and like there were new policies for. So like it's not like these are things that happen frequently,
Mhm.
where it's just a whole bunch of new policy. Um, but
And
kind of going back,
it's hard for employees to keep up with it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
hard for them to keep up with it.
uh, going
Sure.
back to your question on if when people argue and you give them feedback on the QAs, um, I think that it again, it's all in that delivery, as you said. If
Mhm.
they trust you and they're receiving that in the sense of like he, my supervisor's doing this to make me better, they're not going to be defensively arguing. They may question like I don't understand this, but it's not going to be like they're not going to feel like attacked. Whereas if it's something that you haven't built up a rapport with them, they might just say like, "Oh, I'm just being critiqued, so here's my defensive shield." And
Yeah,
then you have to have a conversation of why, what the purpose of the QA is. It's not to get people in trouble. It's to it's to really prevent people from getting in trouble.
it really is. And not only just to prevent them from getting in trouble, it's designed also to prevent the agency from having to answer to the public for having not done what they've been entrusted to do. So, I mean, so you have that too.
Hmm.
Because you don't want a baby call taker or even someone who's been doing it a long time who has fallen into complacency without realizing it, that because that's the true nature of complacency. You feel like everything's fine, but it's not. And
Hmm.
you know, now they've done something or didn't do something, and now we're plastered all over the news. When had we done consistent QAs, we might have caught this before it got bad.
Right. Yeah. And avoided all of that uh,
Hmm.
heartache and hassle.
Yeah, and news coverage and PIOs losing their minds and hair on fire and all the things. Yeah,
Yeah,
and all the
precisely.
things. Yeah.
All of the things.
All
But
the
yeah,
things.
um, there's I guess a story that Abraham Lincoln is credited with having said, um, and I'm going to tell it. So
Go ahead.
uh, there's two woodcutters that are in the forest, and they have this big pile of wood that each of them needs to kind of uh, work through. And so the
Mhm.
first guy picks up his axe and he starts hacking at it as hard as he can all day, and just like sweating and like just trying to get through this pile of wood. And um, he, doesn't finish by the end of the day, even though he worked as hard as he could. And then the second woodcutter, he sits down and he takes out his sharpening stone and sharpens his axe, chops a little bit, and then sharpens it again and keeps his axe sharp throughout the process. And he finishes cutting the wood a lot easier and a lot faster than the first guy that was just going at it as hard as he could. I kind of see QAs somewhat in that light that if you keep your staff sharp, they'll
Yeah.
be able to get through uh, when the fecal matter hits the whirly blades because
Yes.
they'll believe in themselves.
Agreed. Well said. Well said.
But yeah, but yeah, so QAs I think are really important. It's you have to I think sometimes make yourself have time for them.
Yeah,
You
you
know.
have to prioritize them because thankfully, one of my colleagues now, one of our colleagues, obviously I'm acting like one like we don't work together. She is she's pressing in on those and really pressing us towards getting them done because it's just easy to fall off that wagon.
Hmm.
It just is. And I'm finding myself, having that coming to the forefront more and more where I'm like, okay, got to make some time for some QAs, got to make some time for some QAs. And when AARs or our after action review document that we have to put out at the end of those critical incidents, to me, that's not enough.
Hmm. Yeah, because really, at least at our center, the employee doesn't usually see that.
No,
Um,
they don't know and if something has gone, and that, well, and I would say QAs, when they're done consistently, The employee should not be hearing just about the ones that did not go well.
Yeah.
They should be celebrated when they do well and when they are consistently done well. So maybe, make it a contest, come up with a prize or so. I don't know what it would take. But I think you have to find a way to work that in to where it's morale builder for
Hmm.
your center. And so let me ask you this then. Your center in, Anytown, USA, and you haven't done QAs in a year or more. Do you just walk in one day and start doing it?
Well, I think that's all about the delivery of the message. So you want to let people know, hey, my goal is to try and do QAs on you consistently, frequently, so you have feedback because I want you to be the best you can be. That way, because you don't ever want to blindside people like in
Mhm.
the police department. And, we have this terrible habit of really playing all of our cards very close to the vest, uh,
Yeah,
in, including internally sometimes too
yeah,
much.
absolutely.
And so the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and you want to be open and transparent as much as you can,
Mhm.
um, because you know that builds trust. And as we said before, sometimes you can't tell employees everything, but letting them know that your goal is to perform, routine quality assurances on them, is definitely something you can tell them, and so they're not surprised and they receive that in a more positive manner. They don't get their defensive about it.
Absolutely, and they're not afraid because the whole idea is if they're afraid, then they're not gonna be relaxed, and they're not going to you want them relaxed in their work as much as they can be given the kind of work that they do. So if
Hmm.
you have, like Gary and I have, at times, especially coming out of COVID, rebuilding after COVID, finding ourselves now we have more time than we've ever had to start leaning into the QA process. I think it would be wise to shoot something out to your people and say, hey, I know we probably haven't had an opportunity to do these in a while because of whatever the reasons might be. Just know this is going to be starting up again. And the goal is to do these frequently and consistently. Don't be
Hmm.
alarmed. This is what the goal of it is. And we're going to try to have some fun while we're at this.
Hmm.
Put it out there and
Yeah.
be willing to own that it was not malicious that you didn't do them and it's no one's fault. It just stuff happens, but now we're trying to get back on track.
Yeah. And I would say that's also like really key, like, because from like a supervisor or management point, you might feel, well, I haven't been doing them, so I don't want to start now. But that's a like not a that's a terrible attitude. you know,
Agreed.
uh, oh, I didn't get to the gym today. That makes 6 years in a row. I guess I'll stop doing
So,
it.
yeah, don't even bother.
uh,
Way
but
to put
like,
a sister on blast, Gary.
but like even me, someone who's talking so passionately about QAs, like I recognize like I have not been doing them nearly as much as I want to be doing them. And
Mhm.
just because you haven't been doing them doesn't mean, the best time to start is right now.
Agreed. Yeah, and you have to start because if you don't start, you will never start.
Hmm. Yeah.
You won't get it. You'll look up and you'll still be meaning to, still be intending to, and leave it to me to be Debbie Downer. But I'm going to throw something else out here when it comes to QAs.
Okay.
The failure to do them is it can be, depending on what happens. It could be construed as a failure to supervise.
Hmm. Yeah.
And to say, I didn't know this was a problem will never fly if something goes terribly wrong. So
Hmm.
even if, I'm talking to my supervisors now, if for whatever reason you in the past have had it in your head that they weren't necessary, you hate them, you don't feel like doing them, you dread them, whatever that is, that's fine that you feel that way. But just bear in mind that you don't ever want to answer to your next level in your chain or even higher, or God forbid, Joe Citizen's family for having not done your due diligence in making sure that your floor, your staff is well prepared, well trained, and had adequate oversight.
Hmm.
No one ever have to answer for that. And
Hmm.
nothing you tell them will ever be sufficient.
Right. And like also there's precious few things that you can rate people on in this industry because there's so much like variance. Like if you're a cashier at a bank, you can get a really nice objective measure. You were 32 cents over today on your till, you were 16 cents under yesterday. Like
Hmm.
that's really clear, black and white objective. Um, we have things like, your average talk time is, one thing that we look at, but ultimately I want, you to handle the calls well. And if you get a
Hmm.
4-hour suicidal person, your average talk time for that month is going to be screwed.
Yeah,
But does that mean that you did a bad job?
not
Not
at all.
necessarily. In fact,
Nope.
you could have done a very good job. I don't know. Who
And you could
knows?
have won something for that.
Yeah. But, so it's really hard to find really good objective metrics. Whereas, like, if you're a bank teller and, one day your till is $400 off, you did a bad job.
Um,
That
yeah,
even if the next day is $400 in the other way,
yeah,
you're still
still
doing a bad
bad.
job.
Still
Yeah.
not good. Yeah,
So QAs are a nice way to have, even though they're subjective in some ways, you can find ways to really try and make them as objective as possible by saying, did you do part A of this call? Yes, no. Did you do
mhm,
part B? Yes, no. And then, take an average of that or however you want to do them. Just make sure that you're being consistent with them because
agree.
that's what your employees need from you.
And that guidance, oversight, correction, training, and even congratulations on a job well done. All of those things make for healthy, well-rounded employees. And I think
Hmm.
QAs are absolutely necessary. Everybody loves to hear a job well done. Even those ones that swear up and down they don't need to hear it. Well, okay. There's a
Hmm.
couple of things I can say about that, but let me just start by my tone says it all. Everybody wants to hear well done or here's how you can do better as long as it's given in the right tone.
Hmm.
It's what
Because I mean,
QAs do for you.
yeah, ultimately, what that says to the employee is that somebody gives a damn about what I'm doing.
Ain't
Because
that the truth?
it,
Show you right.
it, it can really feel like uh, you're just kind of sitting by yourself in this cubicle because you're not seeing any of the people you're talking to. Mainly, you're communicating by messages. It can be really lonely in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Depending on your center, if it's a really big building, if it's a really small building, you may not have that problem. But this way, it at least is like, oh, what I'm doing, like somebody is watching and cares about if I'm doing a good job.
yeah, agreed.
Well, we hope that we care about if you think that we're doing a good job. So if we
Yeah.
are, leave us a like. We appreciate you watching this episode, and we hope that perhaps it was entertaining or enlightening, or maybe just hopefully filled you with a little bit of renewed confidence to kind of go out there and start a QA program if it's been a while since you had it. It's okay. A
Or if
lot
you
of things
get
have been
one, or if you get one as a result of this episode, know that it is okay.
yeah, a lot of things have been thrown in chaos lately. We're trying to get back to normal. That's okay.
Agreed.
Uh, but thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to drop us a line at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. From all of us at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary,
I'm Erica.
and we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.